Now we're ready to put in her arms, hands, and head. Okay, so taking a look at her arms, we'll start here with her right arm. The upper arm is flowing with the direction that her center front is traveling in, and then the forearm is flowing in the direction that the lower center front is traveling in. So here on the model, I have this line coming down is parallel with center front at the top, and this line coming down is parallel with center front here at the bottom. And then you can also get a sense here about how close her elbow is getting in to her waist area. And then for her hand, you could have where it's popping out a little bit out into space, or you could do something like we did on the advanced croquis where here it's just hiding back down behind her leg. Now for the second arm, if you look at it here, on this model, this arm here is not following center front. The center bone of the arm is actually dropping with gravity. So if you were to line up your ruler with her throat and all the way down here to the base at her shoe, you could see that that would go through the center of her arm. The thing is though, using an arm so close to the body like this, if you keep drawing like puffy dresses and jackets and stuff, a lot of the information is going to be missing. So what I want to do is I want to bring this arm slightly out off of her body. So again, I'll follow what center front is doing to get that upper arm. So again, here's center front, and I was parallel to center front for getting my upper arm. This brings her elbow off the body a little more. Then when I move down for the forearm here, I did something similar to what we did on the standing pose, where the forearm is following the shape of the hip and it's staying here off of the body. So I want to do something like that as well. So it's just following the shape of the hip, and we're keeping the arm a little bit off the body, so later on when you're drawing jackets or something fancy, you'll have some room to draw details for the sleeve of your walking pose. Now once you have your arms in place and you like everything, let's go ahead and erase some of the extra information in here, and we'll finish putting the last little bits of fleshing her out. Now after you did some fleshing out on her arms, go ahead and leave these guidelines here, which was showing the location for the joint, just so I can see that as I'm grading your croquis, so I can make sure that you understood exactly where those locations are. And let's go ahead and darken in the guideline for the bottom of her rib cage, as well as up here in her shoulders. And then we still have to have the seam for the sleeve. Again, this is lining up with her rib cage, but it's just straight right here at the armhole. And if you want, you can stop right before you get to the armpit area so you don't confuse the two. Now at this time, we don't want to draw any more of the trapezius muscle because we still have to put her face in till we find her irises, then we can get the neck coming down. And also I want to draw in the hands lightly first. I want to make sure I love them, and then I'll come back and I'll make them darker. So here I've drawn in a basic face for this figure, and because we made it just a little bit wider than normal, so this was almost 1 inch wide, then it makes her look younger because it looks like her eye line is closer to her chin, her mouth is bigger, her eyes are larger, her face is a little bit wider. And then in comparison to her body, it makes her head look slightly bigger. So this would make her look like a younger model. So the last thing we need to do here is we want to put her neck in. So if you remember, it's going to be the outside edges of her irises from her eye coming down to her jawline and falling straight down with the plumb line. So you can see here that her neck is following parallel with the plumb line. One last thing you'll want to do is you want to also measure from her neck following along this trapezius down to the shoulder. So find that measurement and make sure that the same measurement is on both sides. If it's not the same on both sides, your shoulders might not be perfectly spaced, or the neck that you just drew in, you might have one iris is too far off to one side or the other. So go ahead and adjust whatever you need to do on the neck so you have an even space on both sides. And then let's go ahead and find the center of that space. So once you find the middle location of those 2 points, then come over here and put that location on the shoulder of your croquis. Do the same thing here on both sides. And then we'll have the beginning for doing our princess panels. Again, you'll want to put in a light oval in this area, touching both sides of the neck, so we can get a sense of the curve just like it's on a dress form. And then erase all this other extra information here and inside of here. And you can finish drawing the trapezius muscles, which will end right there at the neck. Now down here at 2 1/4 heads down, we want to go ahead and start getting the apex for her bust, and then we'll draw in a basic bra plus the princess panel guidelines. And you want to make sure that it's evenly spaced from here to here and the same over here. For mine, I can already tell that this side is a little bit longer than this side, so I'm going to go ahead and clean this up and make it match. So now for me, I know I have these perfectly evenly spaced and I'm ready to draw everything in. So for the upper body here, I have my center of the trapezius muscle heading down to the center at the bust level, 2 1/2 heads or 2 1/4 heads down. And then down here at the rib cage, the center here, for my princess panels. And now I'm ready to start getting the arches for her bust apex. Now that I have a A-cup bra in place, I can go ahead and finish getting the princess panel, now aiming for the new apex and then back down to the waist. And let's make this darker. And just for fun, I'll make the center front here go underneath her bra. So I'll go ahead and erase it there and then just redraw this fabric. And I see a little bit of the guideline here on the bra from when we just went straight across from the ruler, and I want to erase that. And now everything is complete. At this point, I think we're ready to start putting her hands on here. And I'm just realizing now I actually never put eyebrows on my girl, so I want to take care of that first. Since I'm making her face look like it's a younger model, like maybe this is a teen model, for the eyebrows, I want to make them intentionally a little bit more thicker and bushier, so it'll look like she's younger because her eyebrows are a little bit unkept. So now, if you remember, the whole eye will fill in all the way out to here. So this is the eyeball. And basically the guideline is to come up from the inside corner and come across from the crease. And this is the beginning spot for the eyebrow itself. Now, if I was doing an older woman, I would have her eyebrow immediately go up and angle back down, and then it would get really thin for this last bit right over here. So this would help her to look older. This is even getting to be a little more like European. So if we want to make hers look a little bit younger, what I would do is, instead of angling up so hard, I would come across so it's a little bit flatter. And then the volume over here would be thick, as well as thick once you're getting down into this outside edge part here. So just by making it a little bit thicker and wider. And then also I would have a couple eyebrows that are kind of going a little bit off skew as well. So this will help to make her look like it's a younger model. So I'm going to go ahead and do something like that right now. Now for doing these hands, what we want to do is, as she's walking along, the thumb is facing out towards the camera. So we're getting the full view of the thumb and the thumbnail. So we're going to want to use the diamond technique. So back when we were learning to do the advanced elegant pose, and then we had the diamond thumb, we were using this technique here. We want to go ahead and do that for this walking pose. Basically, we'll do it for this hand out here. And then this hand here, maybe we'll just have it going back behind her leg. So take out a blank piece of paper, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a layout for doing this pose. And at first we'll do a larger scale like this, and then eventually we'll come in and we'll do it again on her hand for the actual croquis. So take out a ruler and let's get a straight line and measure down to 5 inches. So get the top here, 5 inches there. And then along this line, I only want to worry about the last 2 inches here. So bring your ruler down and we can come up to 1 inch and 2 inches. So we have, this is going to be her hand, and that's the halfway point. And then let's get halfway towards the fingertips and halfway towards the wrist. So over here, this will be the wrist, 1 inch, 2 inches at the bottom. Now let's do this one. So this will be her left hand, so her thumb will be on this side. So what we need is, we need to have 1/2 inch heading this direction and 1 inch heading this direction. And then back up here at the wrist, let's go ahead and get a 1/4 inch on both sides. And basically that's going to be her wrist width right here. And down at the bottom, here we're aiming for the top of the hand and the bottom of the hand. Now what we want to do is, here at the middle of the hand, we're going to start drawing this arch. It's just a very basic arch. And at the fingertips on this side, get the same arch. And here in between those two, get the same arch as well. But now since we're doing an advanced variation of this, for these sides of the arches, we're going to use some pivot points here and here. So this middle pivot point right here is going to line up with this second arch. So following that pivot point, and then the second pivot point was right here, and this is going to line up with arch C. And then these are more accurate to what an actual hand is doing. The next thing we want to do is we want to establish this diamond shape here for her thumb. And in order to get this, I want to find this circle here. So this is that pivot point B from the layout. So come over here, this is arc A, and in between these two, find a middle point, and then draw a circle. So the edges of the circle is even on both sides here and here. And that same size circle, we want to bring it over here so it's on this side of the straight line and in between A and B. Same size circle there. Find the center point of that, and then going from the middle of the wrist, go through that center point all the way out to the fingertips. And then we want the widest part here and here. And then you can take that widest point and connect that also back to the wrist and then out to the fingertip. And then this other widest point back to the wrist and out to the fingertips. And so now we have the basics for what her thumb is going to do inside of this shape. And that's what we see here. This is the right hand and this is her left hand. Now for her thumb's going to come, the skin of her thumb will come all the way out here to arc B. But the thumbnail, I want to make it just a little bit longer than that arc. So if I switch back to my number 2 pencil, make sure it's nice and sharp, and I can come here to this arch B, and I can come out onto these guidelines, and I can make her thumbnail just a little beyond that. And then basically the rest of this is her thumb. So we're going to head out for the knuckle and back in for the shaping of her thumb. And that's what's giving it that diamond shape. It's wider here in the middle. It's more narrow there and more narrow there. Now the next thing we want to do is back here on arch A, this is where the webbing is. For the thumb in this view, we're going to make the thumb the most dominant feature. So the webbing from the thumb will be in front of the pointer finger. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and take this webbing and I'll go past arc A and do my little webbing turnaround. The other side of the thumb is going to do the same angling outwards, but it'll connect back into the wrist. So this is her left hand. So remember, here's the bottom of her wrist, and we're cutting the wrist down because the profile view is more narrow. You'll scoop down towards the guideline and back towards the thumb. Then what we want to do is we want to start to establish her pointer finger. So this will be her top of her hand and her pointer finger coming down. So on this view here, what we'll do is, if her knuckle is right there, heading back towards the wrist, here's the wrist bone. And then for the pointer, I want to do 2 angles. So I want to come to B, and then I want to do another angle to C. So we have a couple knuckle bends going on. Now for the width of her finger, you can use the bottom edge of this guideline circle here. So the webbing from the pointer would go behind the thumb webbing. It would come up and touch that guideline. And then you're slowly starting to make this get more and more narrow. So it's going to taper down as you go. And then remembering this is the pointer finger, and the pointer finger doesn't come all the way out to guideline C. So once you've established where it's going, go ahead and just make it come up a little bit short of that guideline. Now we're ready to put in the fingers that are here behind. The middle finger would be aiming also for the same knuckle point here, and then towards the outside of this pivot point here. So let's start with, if we're aiming for this, we come down to arch B, and then it's going to angle again. And this is the middle finger, so it'll go all the way out to guideline C. And the other side of the finger will be coming out of here, heading towards that bend, and then coming down into here. Now at this scale, we can put in the back two fingers. But once we start drawing these on our little hands on these croquis here, at some point you could almost just even ignore the other fingers behind there. Now here on her middle finger, I've made it connect all the way back to her pointer finger. But realistically, what would happen is inside of her hand, this is the palm area. So what I would do is I would have this middle finger stop just before it touches the pointer. And it gives you a sense of you're still seeing all of the palm skin inside of her hand. So let's just do a couple more fingers here. So again, the ring finger would be aiming back for this knuckle, coming down and out. And it's going to be much shorter than these guys, so you could just turn around and go right back. And then if you wanted to add a little pinky to that, just make sure the pinky is shorter. And you can just connect it right up to that, so it's like the pinky and ring finger are touching. Now, just to get a sense of the scale of the hand that you just drew, we had this dot up here. This was 5 inches away from her fingertips. So put a circle there. That would be her elbow joint. This would be the top of the cylinder for her forearm. And then come down here to the other side of this wrist bone, so we know the bottom of the cylinder. And then this will be the upper outside edge of her forearm. This will be the inner side. So if we put a little 45-degree angle here, then we know that the muscle tone would angle up for that and then back for the wrist. And then the bottom here would angle down for this and back for the joint. And then you'll get the sweetheart shape coming out of there. What I'll do is I'll just draw this hand and you can watch as I go. So that'll give you a basic idea of drawing the two different hands and how they will hang down into the model as she's walking. Alright, so once you've drawn in a left and a right hand, go ahead and take the time to erase some of the extra stuff all around the inside of the hand, now that we don't need that information anymore. But leave the layouts here on the outside so I can still see your layouts in case I had some questions about your hand. The layout will let me know if there was any issues. And I think that's good enough, so let's go ahead and get back to working on our walking pose croquis. Alright, so once I've drawn it in here, then I just go back and I can start erasing some of the old guidelines that are here inside of the hand. But leave these outside guidelines for me to see, so when I come back to review your layout, I can make sure that the layout you did was correct. So go ahead and keep a few of these light little layout lines, but you can erase stuff inside of the hand, is okay. Now for the hand on this other side here, what we'll do is, since she's walking, we'll assume she's just kind of walking fast and that hand is swooping behind her. So you can come in here and we'll get the wrist bone. And then you can follow up to, here's her knuckle, here's one bend, and here's another bend. And basically we're just doing kind of a cheater hand where her thumb and everything is all hiding behind her leg. And then this is the one that is swinging out as she's walking. This leg's coming forward, this opposite hand is coming forward. Now that I have this hand pretty much how I like it to be, I'm going to go ahead and erase some of this extra information. Again, this is inside the hand. But make sure I can still see the guidelines here from when you did the hand layout. So if they're starting to get faded, just go ahead and put them back in. And then for this hand here, I went ahead and I just erased some more, cleaned up the thumb a little bit more, and I fixed her thumbnail. And I think that's good enough. Once I come back in here and I ink my girls, if there's any last little fixes I want to do, I can still have another chance to do that. So just taking one final last look at your model here. Basically we made her look a little bit younger by making her face a little bit wider. And then this is the walking pose, so this is her support leg here, which is all drawn with all the normal proportions. And then this is the walking leg, so the knee cap here is dropped down a little bit lower. And then the calf here is shorter and the foot here is longer. So remember how these flip-flop. This is shorter, these are longer. Then these hips are popping here to her right side, the shoulders are popping to the left side. And we put the advanced elegant hand on here using the diamond thumb technique. Now that we completed the video, your model should be right here on this page. So your first page will look like this. Go ahead and scan this page for me as part of your assignment, And then your homework is to do 2 more models on the second page and make sure that they are mirrored. So this will be the same as when we had model A and model B. So you'll have 2 more croquis and they'll be the opposites.